So I just wanted to welcome you all to our Friday webinar. The Center for Community Solutions and Advocates for Ohio's Future have been co-hosting these webinars since the beginning of April. We really found and saw a need for the ability to quickly share timely information with a large group of folks across the state. So we've been getting around 300 or so registrants every week from social service and human service agencies across the state, state and local government, foundations, really runs the gamut. And we thank you all so much for joining us today. We have a really great lineup of speakers. As I mentioned, I'm with the Center for Community Solutions. We're a nonpartisan nonprofit organization that aims to improve health, social, and economic conditions through nonpartisan research, policy analysis, communications, and advocacy. You can see there, those are our policy priorities. So all of the topics that we're talking about on these weekly webinars fit into many of those areas, and we really are grateful to folks who've been able to join every week as presenters and as attendees to get the most up-to-date information on how health and human services are being impacted by the pandemic. I'm going to turn it over now to Kelsey Bergfeld with Advocates for Ohio's Future, but just really quickly, some of the logistics. Please submit any questions through the chat box. We're going to wait until the end of the presentations to answer those questions. We'll get through as many as we can with the time we have left, but we're also going to keep a record of the chat here so that we can make sure everyone's questions get answered. We'll share those with the speakers afterward and make sure that we can answer all the questions that we're able to and get that information back to all of you. I also wanted to just quickly preview next Friday's webinar. Will feature Emily Campbell, who's the Associate Director at the Center for Community Solutions. She's going to be walking everyone through the responses to a survey that we put out into the field a few weeks ago, asking how organizations across the state have been impacted and are responding to the pandemic. So many of you on this call probably responded to that, and that will be where we share the results. So we look forward to that webinar next week. I will turn it over to you now, Kelsey. Thank you all again for joining us today.
Great, thank you so much, Tara, and good afternoon, everyone. If you are a first-time joiner of our webinar series, I just want to give you a quick background on Advocates for Ohio's Future. We are a nonprofit, nonpartisan coalition of wide-ranging health and human service policy, advocacy, and provider organizations from the state and local government levels. We number at over 500. We really work together to strengthen families and communities through public funding and policies that support health and human services and early care and education, especially as it relates to lifting up those most vulnerable among us. So we are, again, very happy and excited to continue to be part of this webinar series, and we are excited that we have a number of AOF members joining us today. The first half of our presentation will feature leaders from the Ohio Jobs and Family Services Directors Association. We have Joel Potts, who serves as the Executive Director. We have Roxanne Summerlet. She's the Director of the Marion County JFS local agency. We're very excited to have you with us today, Roxanne. We have Jeannie Carroll, and we also have Laura Abu Absi presenting. So when you are ready, feel free to take it away.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. This is Laura Abuabsi, and I'm going to tee things off for our presentation on behalf of the County Departments of Job and Family Services. So we are the association that represents the 88 county departments. Across the state, our agencies administer all of the public assistance programs, and many also oversee the operations of child and adult protective services, child support enforcement, and our public workforce development programs through the County Ohio Means Job Centers. First, I want to thank Advocates for Ohio's Future and the Center for Community Solutions for providing us with this opportunity to speak with you all. And we also really appreciate the Center for Community Solution and AOF's leadership and partnership on really critical time-sensitive issues that we've been able to advocate to the state on successfully that we'll touch on in this presentation, such as federal waivers around our typical eligibility processes. So this presentation today will focus on our public assistance programs and economic supports, and we're very excited to be partnering today with the Children's Services Association, the Public Children's Services Association of Ohio, who has a wonderful presentation to share as well. So in today's presentation, we're going to focus on how county job and family services departments and frontline workers have responded and adapted to the pandemic, challenges we are facing in the counties, advocacy we're doing on behalf of the counties, challenges and changes we are anticipating in the future, and then we're very happy to have Roxanne Summerlot with Marion County to spotlight her county's approach to dealing with the pandemic in the community. So first I'm going to touch on the immediate needs that are being addressed by our county JFS departments. The first program that you'll see listed there is unemployment insurance. That is a state administered program, so it is one program in Job and Family Services that the counties don't administer. However, we really are the face of Job and Family Services in the community, and as a result, we have been receiving an influx of inquiries from both employees and employers who are wondering about accessing state benefits, understanding the various moving pieces between the federal unemployment benefits that have been approved. Those are all a webinar unto themselves, so I will not get into them here, but the state has done an excellent job updating their website if you are looking for more information on those. We have had over 1 million claims filed in the past 6 weeks, which is an unprecedented volume of claims in the unemployment system's history in Ohio. The good thing about the counties receiving inquiries from claimants who are looking for help navigating the system is that it has offered us a wonderful mechanism to inform a lot of people who have never needed to utilize the JFS system before about our programs and how to apply for those. So it's been a wonderful way for us to get our message out into the community. Next, I'll touch on our public assistance programs. These are the 3 main entitlement programs that we administer: Medicaid, SNAP, and Ohio Works First, which is our TANF-funded cash assistance program in Ohio. For Medicaid, in the first 3 weeks of April, we've averaged approximately 3,000 new applications per day. By way of comparison, in January, we averaged about 2,700 new applications per day, and in February, about 2,400 new applications per day. Meanwhile, in SNAP, we've been averaging for that same period of time about 3,700 new applications per day. And by way of comparison, we averaged about 1,600 applications per day in the first 2 weeks of March. So we have really seen a much higher uptick in SNAP applications than we have in Medicaid applications. And we're really curious to continue to analyze these trends in this data and wonder if a part of that is because many employees who have been impacted by business closures have found ways to stay connected to their healthcare coverage, particularly given the fact that the State Department of Insurance loosened up some of those rules for folks to stay connected to coverage. Next, I'll mention our PRC programs, Prevention, Retention, and Contingency programs. Typically, the intent of these programs is to help households stabilize. It's providing work supports and other services to help low-income parents overcome immediate barriers to employment. That's the mission of that program. You'll notice I said low-income parents. That's because PRC is TANF funded. So in order to be eligible, a household must have a minor in the household. PRC is not an entitlement program. It is flexible, and so counties are able to design programs that fill gaps in services in their communities. Typically, a lot of counties will use their PRC programs to cover needs for families like utility costs, some housing costs, car repair or transit, or upfront job costs like uniforms. We are still offering those traditional PRC benefits today, but we also were able to repurpose some summer youth employment funds and some other funds from the State Department, totaling just under $20 million, to create a COVID-19 response fund. And what a lot of counties did with these dollars is provide cash payments to families. With the backlog in families accessing unemployment insurance, counties were able to provide, in many instances, the first infusion of cash and additional resources to families as they navigated their way through the unemployment process, and are continuing then to fill in the gaps with regular PRC benefits as well. Next, I'll turn it over to Jeannie to talk about how we've been able to maintain operations through this crisis.
Thank you, Laura. My name is Jeannie Carroll. I work with Laura and Joel at the association, and I want to share with you a few of the things we've done to maintain operations throughout the crisis. We're very proud of how the counties have responded to the crisis, and there's two critical reasons why we think there's been such a success. And the first one is the waivers that we've received from the state allowed us to streamline our workload. And the second one is the remote work that we have been able to do during this pandemic. The next slide talks a little bit about the waivers. There were many waivers of policy that the state received that allowed us to focus on application processing. Despite the increase in the applications that Laura just mentioned, and due to the economic downturn, counties were able not only to keep up with those new applications, but in many cases they were also able to get caught up on some of the backlog they had of older applications. And additionally, some of our counties got so caught up that they were, many of our counties actually got so caught up with their applications that they were able to help and assist other counties with getting caught up as well. The first three waivers I have listed here, and these are by no means all of the waivers that we received, but this is just a handful of them. But the first three waivers mentioned here, the no processing of Medicaid renewals or adverse action, and the extension of SNAP research periods, and no interim reporting. Those three really let us focus on the new applications, and were really the reason counties were able to clear up or keep current with the applications coming in and get caught up. And the next two, the relaxed paper verification requirements and the verbal signatures for all the programs, including Title 20, really was what allowed counties to do more work remotely. There's a number of waivers we received, but these particular ones were the ones that really helped us be successful. The next slide talks about the remote work that was critical to protect our employees. The transition of operating from an agency operations to home-based operations was done very quickly and very effectively. We did not have a plan for this in place, so a lot of people were scampering around to figure out how to do this, and the teams came together very quickly and worked very hard to make this happen. At this point in time, almost every single county reports working at least some portion of their staff from home, and the majority of them have over 50% working from home. Cuyahoga County is a good example of a county who has successfully and quickly made this transition. They currently have 91% of staff working from home. And not only do staff feel safe, comfortable, and secure at home, they're very appreciative of being able to do so. Kevin Gowan, the director of Cuyahoga, has reported an increase in morale, and additionally, Cuyahoga has shown a great improvement in catching up in their backlog of applications, staying current with those applications, and the waiting time for their phone centers is really down, very much down from what it used to be. So I think this is a good example of how this has worked very, very well. And a lot of our counties have reported some of the same improvements in productivity and morale that Kevin has noted. I want to also say that we've had a remarkable state partnership together. The state and the county partnership really has never been as good as it is right now. They work quickly to request the waivers that have been so helpful, that some of you helped to encourage the state to do, and some that we helped them to encourage the state to do. And the state quickly did that work, and we were able to streamline the eligibility that helps us to do things operationally and to help our clients. The system changes needed to implement the waiver were done quickly and effectively. Those seemed at first to be almost insurmountable, but once we started working as a team, we figured out how to do this. For those of you who remember, who were around when we had the old Chris E program, which really wasn't all that long ago, if you remember that, had we still had that old system, we probably still wouldn't be doing, we'd still be working on the first waiver, and we would never be able to figure out how to work from home. So it's very beneficial that we do have the Ohio Benefits Program now, and it has proved to be pretty nimble and pretty accurate in getting these changes done. Additionally, the ancillary systems at EDMS, our electronic document management system, and the IVR phone system have proven to be extremely effective way for counties to do business. And they were able to change that to make sure they could do that at home. The state's communication strategy has been effective and timely. Director Hall conducts weekly calls with every county director, and the policy areas conduct bi-monthly meetings with county administrators, allowing for a free communication of all of what is going on, and it has been a lot. More has been accomplished in the last 6 weeks, I think, than the last 6 years. So getting all that communication together and working so well together has really been pretty much a miracle. And I thank Director Hall for her work in doing a lot of that, conducting a lot of that work. The state worked quickly with the counties to switch from the agency-based operations to a home-based operation. Each caseworker needed to complete, to have phone equipment and computer equipment that would work at their homes. So we had to work quickly to connect Ohio Benefits and EDMS and the phone systems for all of these folks. The VPNs were received quickly from the state, and the state allowed, and this was a miracle too, one of those little miracles we saw, that the state allowed us to take our desktop computers home, so the caseworkers who did not have laptops that could be that could connect to Ohio Benefits could take home their desktop computers, and that's really been a saving grace for us. At this point, I'd like to turn over this presentation to our director of the association, Joel Potts, to discuss next steps as we move forward.
All right. Thanks, Jeannie. And really, thank you to Advocates for Ohio's Future and Center for Community Solutions. It has been a great working relationship, but I appreciate not just you giving us this opportunity, but all the work you're doing, working with us and working with the state. It is, everything we're dealing with is in uncharted territories, unprecedented times. And I think the leadership and guidance and support that we've gotten out of your organizations has really been helpful. I really just want to touch on a couple things real quick. I don't want to run too far behind, and I've seen some really good questions come across. I was glad Jeannie had talked about the work that they're doing in Cuyahoga County. And I think we're seeing these kind of results all across the state, but you know, and just talking with the county and looking at their data and look at their numbers, we're seeing more clients, and those numbers continue to grow every day, but our productivity has increased. We're streamlining a lot of our processes, which is helping us to have unprecedented response times and turnaround and getting things through the system. Our productivity is up, our morale is up. Really see a lot of great opportunities. So as much as there are a lot of challenges, we are seeing some really good things come out of this. So clearly we're facing two historic crises. One is the pandemic, the other is the recession. They are both occurring simultaneously, which is creating lots of challenges for us. As we start, you know, our first response was, let's make sure we're keeping our clients safe, make sure that we're able to continue to provide services, and make sure that we're in a good situation to have our employees be able to continue to provide services through these uncertain times. So a lot of remote work. Almost all of our metro counties have, the majority of their staff are working from home. Most of our non-metros have been able to do the same thing, and for other reasons, some of them not. I mean, you get into our Appalachian areas, there's a lot of problems with internet connectivity and those sorts of things. So for lots of reasons, there are various structures, but that has allowed us to provide unprecedented services. Just because people aren't physically in the office, we are open. All agencies continue to operate. And frankly, we're working longer, and including weekends, working with the state. We've been able to open our systems, keep them open into the evenings, keep them open for the weekends, and allow us to continue to provide services and doing a lot of things to really, again, streamline this process, get folks through there. As we start getting more folks back into the agency, there are going to be lots of factors you're going to see in your communities as far as whether or not they are physically open to the public or providing services remotely. Some of that is as simple as the structure of the buildings. They have separate entrances for what kind of structures behind the wall. They have a foreign workspace with cubicles, or they have individual offices. So those things are going to go over by things in our company. We also want to make sure some of our agencies have boosted their capacity with Wi-Fi, so the clients can come and actually do the work from the parking lot, and they're able to do that on a regular basis. We also want to make sure that we're continuing to provide a health, safe atmosphere for both clients and the agencies. So whether or not people have individual clients, or are they bringing their family with them, and does everybody have masks? Do we have the cleaning materials? All of those things are coming into play. But we also need to be looking at the rising tide. We know what's coming. We've got public assistance that's coming up. We're seeing an explosion of caseloads, just like we've seen in unemployment. We anticipate seeing more of that. And a lot of this work hasn't been eliminated. It's just been postponed. So we know as we get back into, especially the fall, redeterminations have been delayed, but they haven't been eliminated. Adverse actions have been delayed, haven't been eliminated. We're going to be dealing with open enrollment for healthcare. We also, as it currently stays on the books, we've got a Medicaid work requirement that kicks in at the end of the year. So all of those things are going to be at play. Not to mention, we're also very concerned with what's happening in the economy and whether or not we're going to have the administrative funds, the staffing, to be able to provide it. During the last recession, we saw a loss of about 2,800 employees, doubling of our caseloads, and about 50% reduction in funds. So all of those things are going to be playing into this. Mary, with Public Children's Service Association, is going to talk about children protective services. We have the same concerns for our senior population through our adult protective service system, and just whether or not we're catching everything that's going on out there and providing the kind of supports. It's a constant concern for us. Child support program, as people lose jobs, they're not able to pay for the support. We're going to see needs for court actions, and the courts are going to be backed up. We're going to see the needs for families to have resources to take care of their children, to make sure that individuals who have lost jobs have gotten back into work. And with our high means job centers, a lot of that work is hands-on to help people get reskilled and retooled and get them reemployed. So all of those things are coming up. And we know it's on the near horizon, and we're all going to have to work on that together. And again, very thankful for the partnerships we have with the advocacy community, especially through Advocates of Ohio's Future and Center for Community Solutions. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Roxanne Summerlot. She is the director of Marion County. She is a real leader within our association with her peers, highly respected. She runs a great agency. She very successfully always has engaged her community. She's also, not only does she have tremendous experience in this, she is one of only 19 directors that served in their current capacity during the last recession. So 3/4 of our directors were not around during the last recession. And, we're really going to need to rely on individuals like Roxanne to help us through that. So with that, I turn it over to Roxanne.
Thank you, Joel. Thanks for that. And thanks all of you who are on the line today. I appreciate the opportunity to share local experience from Marion County. I wanted to touch very briefly on the deployment process of waking up one morning and then, ready or not, you are virtual, whether you're prepared or whether you are not prepared. So given the short timeline, we quickly deployed about 90% of our staff to work remotely. That included making sure that our staff was equipped and had access to, I think I counted 6 disparate data systems that were all related to unique programs and some 11 different program-dependent software systems. Some were cloud-based, some were server-based, some were web-based, some required a VPN, some did not. We are a county that doesn't have a dedicated IT person, so we relied on the direction, but not on-site assistance of our State Department's IT team. And as Jeannie will attest to, they worked honestly day and night to make sure that we had the information that we needed to make the process organized and quick. Something that we did, we started off with, in my county, doing a remote readiness survey of all staff, asking questions about what kind of devices they had personally, what kind of internet connectivity, how comfortable they were in resolving their own computer issues, and how comfortable they were in resolving their own program or policy issues, thinking ahead that they're going to be working more independently than normal. We used that survey result to deploy those that were most ready first, thinking that we could get them set up and then they would act to help those others that came afterwards. And that seemed to work really well with us. So we had sort of a built-in help desk from the very beginning from those more ready staff members. We found very early on that personal devices did not work well, given the complexity of our systems. And so we had some staff start off with their own device, but quickly changed to, we deployed their PCs, to big monitors, their headsets, their scanners in some instances. And in my county, we reached out to Verizon, and Verizon was generous enough to give us iPhones for all of our staff without charge, and we have a temporary contract with them for unlimited voice, text, and data. And that seemed to be very valuable because they could use those to connect with each other, even, FaceTime with each other to show what screen they were on, or their supervisor could easily see what they were working on. The other thing that we thought about is that as we're calling clients and relying more on phoning people, if we used personal phones, we could block the number, but like most people, if you see a blocked number, you probably don't answer that number. So we had our iPhones programmed to ID whether it was calling from JFS or from child support or from our OMJ center, so that people were sure to answer their phone. In terms of providing public benefits, we really see ourselves as an agency in our community as serving two intertwined purposes, one being to support families and the other being to support our local economy. And as you all know, those are interdependent on each other. So our immediate call to action, of course, was to support families, and primarily immediately through the traditional and basic core federal programs of SNAP, Medicaid, and TANF assistance. In our particular county, we have been doing that, and primary access has been since 2012, actually, after the last Great Recession, that prompted us to form a multi-county call center where we could share staff and other resources to meet the needs of our combined clients. So we're used to doing that by phone, and we've been doing that for many years, providing access to all programs in that manner. And our constituency was familiar with that. So we made that transition easily. We didn't anticipate having a call center that was home-based, but it is now completely home-based, really without any disruption at all. As Jeannie mentioned, we've been able to not only keep up, but kind of get ahead of applications coming in, to the extent that we've been able to assist some larger counties outside of our immediate group that have some unique circumstances where they needed some additional assistance. And I think importantly, I don't know for other counties, but most of the people in our area use Assurance as a source of a government-sponsored cell phone. And we were sort of worried about people being able to call and not come in, but Assurance provided customers with unlimited voice, text, and 6 gigs of data monthly. I think they're continuing to do that. So I think that was very helpful as we entered into the virtual scheme that we're in. As Joel mentioned, we had a specific allocation of dollars that we used for a COVID-19 response program. And we did do a direct payment to eligible families for $500. We were able to serve about 350 families in our community. We targeted that program to people who had lost unemployment income through job loss or reduced hours due to that COVID incident. And most of those people, I would say 90%, were not known to our agency previously. So it gave us good opportunity to connect with people that were unfamiliar with our system and programs and explain what other assistance may be available either now or in the future for those people. So that was a great opportunity. Just to give you an example, I didn't certainly look at all those applications, but from time to time I would see one. We had a person laid off from a local manufacturer who's a Honda supplier. And he and his wife were had 3 grandchildren and a niece in their home. Not a formal kinship experience, no relationship with our county child protective agency nor the courts. But given that circumstance, we were able to let them know that because they were caring for kin, they were also eligible for a number of things through our regular PRC program, and they had no idea. And even while they were working, they were hanging on by a thread. So that gave us a great opportunity to reach out and establish connections with people that really needed us before, but were unaware. So my staff was very excited about that and became more excited each time they came across a client that was in that circumstance. In terms of our regular PRC, we've been communicating regularly with our local helping organizations like Community Action, Legal Aid, United Way, to gain insight from everyone's experience and use that insight to help us revise our PRC program in light of the things that we're seeing now or we anticipate to be seeing. So we generally have or in the process of expanding either the categories of service in terms of dollar amounts or expanding access for people to those particular service categories with particular attention, I would say, on housing. We are all in our community concerned about when the moratorium on rent and mortgage ceases, what will happen to families that don't have the ability to pay 3-4 months rent when that becomes due. So we're working as a community to try to respond to that situation, and through our PRC program, we can do that to the extent that we have available funding and that we are working with families with minor children. So I think that we'll see more demand on those services and different kinds of services that maybe that we've used in the past or that we've responded with in the past. I would say, going on to our ability to serve our economy, we already and continue to be in conversations, Zoom conversations, with our Economic Development Board as well as local employers. And as we think through how we best prepare for getting people back to work. Um, we also recognize that we're going to be able to, we need to be able to change how we operate and how we work with individuals and businesses during this um, current COVID time and as we go through the next months. We started exploring virtual ways of doing things like job fairs, video conferencing, video interviewing. Um, that means that for the staff that we have, we are going to need to upskill them rapidly. Um, you know, as we all can identify with, we are dealing with technologies and equipment that we were formerly not very proficient with, and we suddenly need to be very proficient with them. So we're looking at that as something that we need to do to support our staff, and also support staff in knowing when that's appropriate to work remotely and when we need to touch people personally for the most effective outcome. So it's been exciting. I think one of the great benefits of this experience is that it's made us very, very cognizant of the fact that leadership does matter, and the leadership of our State Department, Job and Family Services, as well as the Ohio Department of Medicaid, has been so impactful, not just to me as a director, but to my staff as well. When my staff turn in every day at 2 o'clock and listen to the governor, and they normally would not have done that, I don't think. The level of trust and confidence that's been inspired by the governor, by his cabinet directors, by Dr. Acton, as well as local leadership of elected officials and other community-based organizations, has given comfort to a lot of people, including staff. As Jeannie mentioned, staff has been amazing. And I can't say I'm surprised or shocked, because we always knew that I know what my staff is capable of in terms of work and in terms of caring, but it certainly has bolstered all of us in our ability to lead through this experience in seeing what our staff is doing, and knowing I get emails probably 2 or 3 times a week still from individuals that say just how grateful they are, not just to have a job, but to have this job and be in a position to help other people when so many others are either out of work or in positions where they just have to sit and wait to see what is going to happen next. So it's been challenging, but it's also been enlightening in a good way. So I again would just like to express appreciation for local leaders. I know that we've relied heavily, as we always do, on other organizations. Our United Way has provided funding for non-TANF eligibles. Our Sheriff Department has designated a unit to make well checks on our seniors. Our legal aid has been doing a lot of work in the housing space and lead our local housing coalition. So we rely on all of those, and we very much appreciate the wisdom of their experience as well. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. This is Mary Wachtel. I hope folks can hear me. Maybe a nod. Okay, thank you. Really appreciate that overview from JFSDA. Shout out to AOF. We're proud members of that coalition. I'm joined today by 2 frontline workers, so I really want to get to their presentations. Sarah and Ashley, get ready sooner than you thought, because I'm going to rush through my slide, and you can go to the next slide, Kelsey. We are the Public Children's Services Association of Ohio. We do represent the local county children's services agency. Takeaway I want you to have on a big picture is that children's services is open for business. It's not business as usual. We have a statutory mandate to perform our child protective services regardless of the pandemic, and those mandates aren't waived. We have to be open to accept reports of concern about child abuse and neglect. We have to initiate contact and safety investigations for those reports that we screen in, and we must continue to ensure the safety of children in open and ongoing cases. So those are not waived. They should not be. We do have some flexibility from both the federal and state levels to carry those out. The easiest example I can give to you is that while we have to continue to conduct visits, some of those visits can be done on a virtual instead of face-to-face basis, and that's on a case-by-case consideration of safety and risk. You can go to the next slide. Broadly speaking, we have three main concerns. First being child safety. I think most folks have probably seen by now that preliminary data from April show that referrals or calls into children's services have been down about 50% across the state. Not as many eyes are on kids, but at the same time, our agencies are saying that the reports that are coming in are more severe. We have placement challenges. It's difficult at times to find folks who are willing to take in kids who are coming into custody, who may have had a risk of exposure. We are starting to hear about some kids themselves or family members who are positive. So that is challenging. And of course, worker safety, varying levels of access to personal protective equipment. Obviously, we must have some face-to-face contact, and you try to, approach that as carefully as possible, et cetera, et cetera. So I wanted to quickly get on then to my colleagues. I think most of us are aware that people struggling with addiction is particularly challenging during the pandemic. And we're focusing with you today on two folks, Sarah Neff and Ashley Durst, who both work in the Ohio START program. They are children's services workers because this is a children's services led program that pairs caseworkers, behavioral health providers, and family peer mentors into teams that help folks who are recovering from substance use disorders and have interaction with children's services. It's a great program. It was started under Attorney General DeWine, has been expanded under Governor DeWine, is operating in 46 counties currently, and it's led and housed at PCSAO. So our first presenter is the wonderful Sarah Neff, who works as a family peer mentor in the Ohio START program with Warren County Children's Services. And you'll see both from Sarah and Ashley's pictures, they're in the car because they're out and about for their jobs, and that has not stopped. So let me turn it over to Sarah to tell you a little bit about the work.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I just wanted to take a minute to introduce myself. My name is Sarah Neff. I'm a family peer mentor. I work with Mental Health America, and I'm contracted out to Warren County Children's Services as their Ohio START peer mentor. I wanted to first touch base with how many families we're servicing right now. Warren County has 12 families, so that is about 22 adults that I'm working with, and also our caseworker is working with. Currently, out of those 12 families, we have graduated 2 families successful during the COVID crisis as of yesterday. So we're very proud of the families just continuing to push through all the stuff that's going on. Out of those there's about 10 families that have been actively engaged. They're still doing what they need to do. They're participating, they're reaching out, they're speaking with their treatment providers. There's still a few struggles, but they're doing what they need to do. Out of those 10 families, we have about 3 families that are in active use, 2 of which started right around COVID, if not shortly before. And then once COVID happened, their use increased, and we have not had contact with those families. We've reached out, they'll text back, they won't show up. So there's a lot of things going on with not just their addiction, but also their mental health during this crisis. Um, due to those crises, I've noticed an increase in stressors. One of the stressors being that these families are used to being themselves. So they're not only now becoming parents and learning how to parent sober, they're also then becoming a teacher and whatever other services they have to provide for their kids. So one of those things that I've done to try to help with that stress is to send out a family activity through the mail. This is something I was doing prior to COVID, except I would do a family activity in person with those families. But I've kind of changed it to where they'll get the activity in the mail. Then they will give me a call. We'll set up a time via FaceTime, Duo, or Messenger, whatever works best for them. And I include my children in the activity. So me and my children will complete the activity while the families and their children are completing the activity. I think that this has allowed that stress from the parents to realize, hey, I'm going through this with them and we're going to struggle and we're going to figure it out together on how to parent during the crisis. It also allows the kiddos to interact with other children outside of their home, because we all know that most of us that have kids, they're going stir crazy just as badly as we're going stir crazy. So I think that touching on that stress, just how to just be ourselves and also interact with our kids, but include them in things. This activity has really given the families an opportunity to be at ease and at peace, and then I can help walk them through any situation that they're going through. The second stressor that I wanted to kind of highlight that I've seen during this crisis is parents that are fresh in recovery are receiving tax returns and now a stimulus check. That, for me and my own recovery, I remember brought on serious behaviors, getting all that money, being fresh in recovery and not knowing how to manage it, let alone what to do with it, often triggers families to want to use or spend on just random things just because they have the money in hand. I've noticed a lot of the families reaching out to me about financial advice, and then talking to them about how to maybe have somebody else in their family that's more responsible budget their money and then hand that out to them as they need it, starting savings accounts, because that does build a stress when you're not sure what to do with something, and then you start to guilt shop. Because your kids are stuck at home and you're stuck at home and you have all these different things that you can do to just spend that money. So just talking about budgeting to help with their stress in that area. And finally, the third stressor that I just wanted to highlight today was noticing the involvement in their treatment or their recovery path. Most of these families are used to going to their AA, their NA, their Celebrate Recovery, or to their treatment provider, their therapist. It's now become all virtual, which even for myself can be a little stressful. So I can understand why they're not getting that intimacy or that personal relationship that they would if you were in person. So the one thing that I've noticed about that is, even though they're engaged in these things, myself and the caseworker that I work with, Lainey, have been the constant in their lives. We're still going out weekly to our weekly families. We're still going out bi-weekly to our bi-weekly families. When we're not seeing them, we're texting them, we're calling them, so that they still have that constant person that they're seeing, because although they're involved in their treatment, those people aren't there personally. So we're still reassuring them that they have that support system that they need. I think also just one of the things adding to that is that it's important that not only are we there for them, but we're physically there for them. I think for a lot of the families, including myself, I know that I've reached out extra for myself to my supervisors or my peer support or my therapist and my group that I connect with, just because we're not used to having to navigate maybe the technology. Not everybody's technology savvy, so it's hard for them to set up the meetings that they have to do, or the AA or the Celebrate Recovery. So it can be very overwhelming and frustrating. But just knowing that as a peer support, I understand that. As our caseworker, Lainey, she understands that. So we're trying to connect with them, help them set these things up so that they feel comfortable, or even being there with them and helping them walk through an additional duo meeting or therapy meeting so they feel comfortable. Prior to all of this, we were continually taking on cases. And I just want to say how proud and how honored I am to be a part of Warren County, that in the midst of the COVID crisis, we have actually taken on 3 additional families as of March 25th. We've continued to enroll families into our program and continued to graduate families through our program. So regardless of what's going on, we're still doing what we need to do. We're still here. We're still supportive. We're still encouraging. And I'm going to continue to do that. And I know so is Warren County. It's very important that people know that we do recover, and the way that we recover is working as a unit. So with that, I just want to turn that over to Ashley, and she can go ahead and talk.
Thank you so much for allowing me to participate today. I agree with everything that Sarah said. We are having very similar challenges and approaching them in also very similar ways. My role with families is I'm the Ohio Start caseworker. I have been in this position for a little over a year. We currently work with 11 Ohio Start families. We have actually also taken 2 new cases within the last 2 weeks. I'm responsible for the child safety aspect as the caseworker of each family. I conduct contacts with the parents, children, and the caregivers when the parents are placed outside of the home. It's my role to help the family establish objectives and goals and to evaluate the progress of these goals. It's my responsibility to provide resources and support these families. I can also help provide transportation when needed. All of the families that I work with have substance use issues as the START program. It's the primary concern. Currently for our families, about half of them are doing okay. These families were pretty much doing okay prior to COVID. We are struggling with the other half as they have relapsed, are in active use, or have not been responding to me or my family peer mentor. This is definitely challenging times. Now with COVID, balancing the flexibility of the cases and the risk and the safety needs, we're supposed to be limiting our contact with our families. However, this is a very intensive program, and we feel the need to still see, like Warren County, see them as much as possible to make sure that their needs are being met. My supervisor and I evaluate each case weekly, sometimes daily, to decide what the needs are. We try to determine which individuals need the face-to-face contact to feel supported and to provide the best level of safety. Alternatively, it's a discussion on those that are doing okay and using other alternatives, the virtual like Zoom, Messenger, to provide at least some level of support still reaching out to these families and seeing what they need. I also have a few cases right now that have active safety plans, which means I am required to have eyes on contact with the children and family members. With COVID, we've been trying to meet with the families outside when possible to keep some distance. I also take my temperature daily, carry a thermometer with me in case there's questions with anyone else that I'm seeing. I also have all of the safety precautions that Mary talked about earlier, such as the gloves, goggles, masks, sanitizers, and sprays. We try to call our families prior to each face-to-face contact to see if anyone in the household is sick or exhibiting any COVID symptoms. If they are, then we reschedule for a later time or conduct the contact through other video means so that we can still have that face-to-face contact. It's definitely been a balancing act to ensure that those needing the higher level of support are able to receive it. Like I previously stated, we also use the other forms of technology, Zoom, Messenger, FaceTime, whatever works for the clients, so that we can actually still have contact with them and support them. But honestly, it's not, I don't think it's easy, because it's more beneficial to see families in person. It always is. It's definitely more difficult to read the behaviors through the video chats. I talk with a lot of my parents and caregivers over the phone in between the face-to-face contacts or the virtual contacts also, to kind of just make sure that that they know that, like Sarah said, we're still here to support them. We're still here as a team alongside of them, and if they need anything, they do still have us. I think that's probably one of our biggest challenges right now, is balancing the need to have the face-to-face contact for the safety of us and the family members. I mean, prior to the pandemic with Ohio Start, we have weekly contact with families. Now we have to look at, does that make sense? Are they in a good place? Are they struggling? What do each specific family member need? And there's some families that don't want me to come face to face because they're obviously fearful. But most of them, I think, like Sarah said, look forward to having the support from us, especially because they have lost most of their other resources, or they've changed to a more virtual telephone kind of system. So they're definitely more limited at this time. I think that's pretty much all that we're doing right now in Trumbull County.
This is Mary. If I could just say, first of all, a big thank you to Sarah and Ashley. We really wanted you to get a very up close look at how the work is proceeding, and you know, what they're describing is what our agencies across the state are doing. So we know that the, you know, what's first and foremost in children's services agencies and staff's minds are the safety of the children that that they serve. And we wanted you to kind of get this more up close of what all goes into weighing, you know, how to best do that. On the screen is information on how to access some of the resources at PCSAO. We'll turn it back over to the organizers for wrapping up or taking question, whatever's next.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Danny Carlson. I am the Communications Director for the Center for Community Solutions. And Kelsey, if you can advance the slide one more, we can see all of our presenters up on the screen. So we are running short on time, and we want to be respectful of everyone's time. But I did want to ask just 2 questions, because we got a lot of questions, and we'll try to get as many of those answered as possible from the presenters after the webinar is complete. But the first question to Joel, Roxanne, Jeannie, Laura, we received several questions on timeline. How easy is it to get Medicaid right now? What's the timeline for someone applying for SNAP? Can any of you give us a general idea in terms of timeline for those benefits?
I can answer that just from our actually 9-county collaborative in terms of processing. The timeline for Medicaid typically is a little bit quicker than the food assistance benefit, and I would say from application to approval, I mean, it could be a matter of a couple of days to a week. That's in terms of what our timeline is right now. Food assistance, I'm going to say maybe a week or 2 weeks. So that's and that also depends on the individual circumstance. If there's a circumstance where we have considered what we call expedited, then that would be a day, maybe 48 hours.
Great, thank you, Roxanne. And we'll ask one additional question. One question that we got for Mary, for Sarah, for Ashley, what are your fears for the safety of the children when a virtual home visit replaces a visit? And have any of you seen an uptick in abuse reports?
I'll start. This is Mary. I think both Ashley and Sarah spoke to the process. There is a process that agencies and workers go through to decide the appropriateness of a virtual versus a face-to-face visit. So there are a lot of considerations that go into that. So I think broadly speaking, what's typical is that I'm going to say the quote lower risk cases would be where the virtual technology is used the most, excuse me. To the second question, no, we have not seen an uptick in reports of abuse. In fact, it's been the opposite, where the calls coming into our agencies have gone down. The April data showed, at least initially, that statewide that was about a 50% drop. We're waiting for, I'm sorry, that was the March data. We're waiting for the April data to see if that trend is continuing. But our agencies report that while their call volume is down, the severity of the calls they're getting is up, and they are not experiencing a decrease in the number of kids in custody. Sarah and Ashley, did you want to add anything about the virtual visits?
Yeah, this is Ashley. I'm very hesitant to do my virtual visits. Like I said, this is a conversation with myself and my supervisor at least weekly to kind of balance where people are at. We try to use all of the collateral contacts that we can get, such as reports from their counselors. We are still drug screening our families weekly in their home by an outside company. So we take all of those things into consideration in addition to the other communication that we have with our families. Our face-to-face visits are only one piece. I probably talk to most of my families more than once a week. So it's kind of really figuring out where they're at and if they're really doing as well as sometimes they say they are, for us to decide if we need to have that face-to-face visit or not. Whenever there's a doubt, it's always a face-to-face visit.
Great.
Thank you all so much. Oh, sorry, Danny.
No,
I was
go
just, we're a couple of minutes over. I know we still have some outstanding questions, so we're gonna document these, get them out to the speakers, and then make sure that anyone who asked the question is able to get some additional information on what they were seeking. So we really appreciate all of the questions that came in, and we had a lot of great content to get through. I want to thank our speakers, Joel and Laura and Jeannie and Roxanne and Mary and Sarah and Ashley. Thank you so much for your time today and all of the work that you and your agencies are doing across the state. We all really, really appreciate it. In this sort of trying time, it's we're even more grateful for the work that you all are doing. We also want to echo what a lot of you said, and I think what we heard on our Medicaid focused webinar last week, in that we've had a really great relationship with our state level partners and have just made strides in getting the accommodations to really get the work done in the midst of a pandemic. It's been it's been great, and we want to thank our state partners as well. So thank you all for joining us today. I know we ran a little bit over. We had a lot of great information. This presentation will be posted to the Center for Community Solutions as well as Advocates for Ohio's Future's website later on today, and it'll be available for all of you to go back and catch anything, or if you know folks who wanted to join, you can share that with them. We want to thank you all and look for the notices for next week's webinar registration. We'll keep doing this, I think, through the end of June. We have a lot to talk about still in various topics across the state and how folks are responding. So thank you again. Enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and we hope to see you next Friday. Thank you.